please. Says the House will please come to order. Welcome, colleagues of the 66th Wyoming Legislature and all those tuning in both in the gallery and throughout the world. We appreciate you joining us on the 14th day. It looks like we have a few committees maybe still out. Let me see. Let's hold the roll call. Let's start with our prayer of the day, and that'll get us started off right, and our pledge, and then we can start with roll call. Please join us with Reverend Thompson. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you again for the privilege of praying with you this week. During my prayer this morning, I'll be leaving a time of silence for you to offer up prayers for people in your community. Hear these words from Matthew 5. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Eternal God, creator of the universe, great and wonderful are your works, wondrous are your ways. Thank you for the splendid variety of your creation, for the glorious mountains, the roaring rivers, the expansive oceans, and the wide open plains. All creation gives you glory and sings your praise. O Lord of providence, holding the destiny of the nations in your hand, we pray for our state and for our country. Inspire the hearts and minds of these representatives as leaders, that they, together with all of our state, may seek first your kingdom and your righteousness, so that order, liberty, and peace may dwell with all people. Take away any mistrust or any lack of understanding that would divide us, and increase in us the recognition that we are all your children. God, as the representatives complete their work this week, I pray for good rest over the weekend. I pray your travel mercies upon those who head home, and a restful weekend for all, a time to turn their attention to you, their God, to their families, and to their friends. As these women and men are hard at work, there are many concerns on their hearts from their hometowns and their families, loved ones, and people from their communities whom they know personally. God of healing and wholeness, in this moment of silence, hear the prayers of each representatives for those they know and love. God, I pray for the workers in this building, and we are thankful for their dedication. We lift up to you the support staff of the House and the Senate, thankful for their commitment and the wonderful gifts they bring that make work possible. We pray for the women and men who serve in this building to protect all people. We are thankful for their self-sacrifice and strength. I ask you to bless all people who are in this building today with your peace. God of wisdom and authority, as these leaders seek to govern and discern your will, I pray your Holy Spirit guide them. May your light be reflected in the decisions that they make, so their work may give you glory. May your holy word be a light to our path, guiding us in each step we take. As we make our journey, enlighten the path you would have us walk, that we might always choose the way of your will here on earth as it is in heaven. In Christ's name I pray, amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you very much, and thank you, members of the House, and thank you, Reverend Thompson. One of the most unique voices that we hear on this floor is your voice. I just got to say that out loud. So thank you very much, and we thank you for your prayers this past week. Thank you. We're doing the safe tunnel approach this year. We'll send them down the tunnel, but we're just going to clap. Representative Nyman, do you have a privilege of the floor you'd like?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I would like to take this opportunity to let you all know, some folks up in my part of the country had a pretty awesome thing happen yesterday. The Upton Bobcats, boys basketball, they went down and they won their very first state championship. Awesome stuff. And I just want to give an opportunity to be able to give you some information on these folks. Yes, it did say that the girls placed second for the 1A for the first time since 1984, the Upton Bobcat girls. Boys won the state 1A championship for the first time in the basketball championship in the school's history in Upton, Wyoming. So I also think you need to give a shout out to the people that helped those folks so much. The boys coaches were Joel Samuelson and Nick Johnson, and the girls coaches are Jackie Materi and Laura Turner. So just wanted to tell everybody know how awesome basketball Wyoming.
That is fun stuff. That is the good stuff. That's the stuff that, you know, makes the days that we have here worth it, because we know we're supporting those families and those folks are back home. So thank you for sharing that. We appreciate that. If they happen to get down here and want to visit, we'll give them a standing O right here on the floor. Any other privileges? I see. Yes, please.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I arrived at my desk this morning on my center little cubby there was a lovely earring. And it is not my earring. It is apparently Representative Duncan's earring, and the mystery is now solved.
We're always here to help. All right, so we've done our two things. It looks like we have most members in the roll. We're going to go for roll call. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Convening roll call for the 14th day, Friday, March 5th, 2021. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
Here.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Blackburn. Hallinan. Larson Dan. Western. We have 59 present, 1 excused.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. I saw the good chairman of revenue at the mic, Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please.
Okay, members, it's not anyone from back home, you know, county number 1.
We've heard.
Okay, I'll save that for when we get somebody from because we're going to start Mustang Monday next week. But anyway, Mr. Speaker, I want to, I mentioned that when I presented the bill in minerals, most of these ideas, we've got 500 bills, whatever it is. It's not all it's people who come to us, our constituents, folks we know around the state. And I want to, House Bill 67, this pumped hydrogen that will be for the body, approved from our minerals committee the other day. And really the genesis of this is a citizen from Wyoming. And he took a day's vacation leave day to come here and watch the proceedings. And I want to introduce you to Michael Burnett. If you could stand up and be recognized, thank you for your good work. Citizen Wyoming, good job.
Welcome to the House. We're glad to have you here with us today. Any other privileges? Any other privileges? All right, we're at that order of business. And you'll see the stack of bills before you. So certainly I understand if you want to go get a fresh cup of coffee or do something, we're going to reading an introduction of bills. This is going to take a little bit, as I mentioned. Oh, we've got some messages from the Senate. Journal Committee report, sorry. Read the script, Barlow. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of March 4th, 2021 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Provenza and Harrelson.
Thank you. So now we're at that order of business of introduction, reading and reference of bills. And members, like I said, I'd like to keep the noise down on the floor so that it doesn't get picked up in the rest of the world, but this is going to take a little while. I think there's 50, 60 bills. Let's see, how many do we have? 50 bills to introduce. So this is going to take a little while. This is not our last day for introductions. So if there's something you really feel strongly about needs to be brought out, we still have Monday. But we're trying to get them out to committees right now. So the first bill for our consideration is House Bill 193.
House Bill 193, sponsored by Representative Crago.
First reading of the bill.
County Attorneys, Representation of Special Districts.
House Bill 193 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next reading bill for our consideration is House Bill 209.
House Bill 209, sponsored by Representative Olson.
First reading of the bill.
Regulation of marijuana.
House Bill 209 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 210.
House Bill 210, sponsored by Representative Bear.
First reading of the bill.
Minor sex traffic victims liability.
House Bill 210 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 212.
House Bill 212, sponsored by Representative Provenza.
First reading of the bill.
Criminal record expungement revisions.
House Bill 212 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 213.
House Bill 213, sponsored by Representative Provenza.
First reading of the bill.
Disclosure of peace officer recordings.
House Bill 213 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 218.
House Bill 218, sponsored by Representative Sweeney.
First reading of the bill.
Bias motivated crime.
House Bill 218 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 236.
House Bill 236, sponsored by Representative Washit.
First reading of the bill.
Firearms transactions, financial discrimination.
House Bill 236 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 246.
House Bill 246, sponsored by Representative Stivar.
First reading of the bill.
Eliminate fines and fees for juvenile offenders.
House Bill 246 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 247.
House Bill 247, sponsored by Representative Provenza.
First reading of the bill.
Law enforcement hiring practices.
House Bill 247 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Next bill for our committee's consideration is House Bill 125.
House Bill 125, sponsored by Representative Newsom.
First reading of the bill.
Simulcasting.
House Bill 125 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 126.
House Bill 126, sponsored by Representative Burt.
First reading of the bill.
Public building art mandate repeal.
House Bill 126 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 158.
House Bill 158, sponsored by Representative Harshman.
First reading of the bill.
Local land use, planning and zoning.
House Bill 158 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 195.
House Bill 195, sponsored by Representative Olson.
First reading of the bill.
Wyoming Medical Review Panel repeal.
House Bill 195 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 197.
House Bill 197, sponsored by Representative Newsom.
First reading of the bill.
Connect Wyoming Program, federal funding.
House Bill 197 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 203.
House Bill 203, sponsored by Representative Sherwood.
First reading of the bill.
Small business relief.
House Bill 203 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 219.
House Bill 219. House Bill 219, sponsored by Representative Nicholas.
First reading of the bill.
Investment funds, committee membership.
House Bill 219 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 242.
House Bill 242, sponsored by Representative Harshman.
First reading of the bill.
State land leases amendments.
House Bill 242 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 243.
House Bill 243, sponsored by Representative Harshman.
First reading of the bill.
State accounts, elimination and transfer of funds.
House Bill 243 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 244.
House Bill 244, sponsored by House Appropriations.
First reading of the bill.
State Investment Administration.
House Bill 244 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 263.
House Bill 263, sponsored by Representative Nicholas.
First reading of the bill.
State Coronavirus Recovery Funding.
House Bill 263 is referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 168.
House Bill 168, sponsored by Representative Connolly.
First reading of the bill.
Sales and use tax application.
House Bill 168 is referred to Committee Number 3 Revenue. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 182.
House Bill 182, sponsored by Representative Yin.
First reading of the bill.
Personal income tax.
House Bill 182 is referred to Committee Number 3 Revenue. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 189.
House Bill 189, sponsored by Representative Hunt.
First reading of the bill.
Mine product taxes for natural gas consumed on site.
House Bill 189 is referred to Committee Number 3 Revenue. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 226.
House Bill 226, sponsored by Representative Jennings.
First reading of the bill.
Permanent Mineral Trust Fund Investment in Inspect.
I think it's specie.
Yep. Specie. In specie.
House Bill 126 is referred to Committee Number 3. 226 referred to Committee Number 3 Revenue. Don't get off track, Barlow. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 231.
House Bill 231, sponsored by Representative McGuire.
First reading of the bill.
College credit retention.
House Bill 231 is referred to Committee Number 4 Education. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 188.
House Bill 188, sponsored by Representative Hunt.
First reading of the bill.
Irrigation district loans.
House Bill 188 is referred to Committee Number 5 Agriculture. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 229.
House Bill 229, sponsored by Representative Nyman.
First reading of the bill.
Livestock Identification Choice Act.
House Bill 229 is referred to Committee Number 5 Agriculture. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 220.
House Bill 220, sponsored by Representative Wharf.
First reading of the bill.
Wild Game Rendering Inedible Portion 2.
House Bill 220 is referred to Committee Number 6 Travel. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 227.
House Bill 227, sponsored by Representative Jennings.
First reading of the bill.
Hunting tag refund or reimbursement, chronic wasting disease.
House Bill 227 is referred to Committee Number 6, Travel. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 215.
House Bill 215, sponsored by Representative Andrew.
First reading of the bill.
Cosmetology and barbering practice amendments.
House Bill 215 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 190.
House Bill 190, sponsored by Representative Brown.
First reading of the bill.
Vehicle titles for non-resident owners.
House Bill 190 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 223.
House Bill 223, sponsored by Representative Baker.
First reading of the bill.
Interstate 80, safe speeds.
House Bill 223 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 228.
House Bill 228, sponsored by Representative Roscoe.
First reading of the bill.
Highway closure violation amendment.
House Bill 228 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 241.
House Bill 241, sponsored by Representative Burkhart.
First reading of the bill.
Fees for oversized and overweight loads on highways.
House Bill 241 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 254.
House Bill 254, sponsored by Representative Burkhart.
First reading of the bill.
Transportation computer system.
House Bill 254 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 196.
House Bill 196, sponsored by Representative Connolly.
First reading of the bill.
Workplace Transparency Act.
House Bill 196 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 205.
House Bill 205, sponsored by Representative Banks.
First reading of the bill.
Select Committee on Extractive Industry Transitions.
House Bill 205 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 207.
House Bill 207, sponsored by Representative Haroldson.
First reading of the bill.
Coal-fired generation facility closures litigation funding.
House Bill 207 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 239.
House Bill 239, sponsored by Representative Greer.
First reading of the bill.
Workers' compensation, student learner agreements.
House Bill 239 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 248.
House Bill 248, sponsored by Representative Bear.
First reading of the bill.
Electricity production standard.
House Bill 248 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 257.
House Bill 257, sponsored by Representative Fortner.
First reading of the bill.
Coal-fired power plant closure moratorium. Moratorium.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
sir.
Nope, that's fine. I had to look at it several times myself. House Bill 257 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 258.
House Bill 258, sponsored by Representative Zwanitzer.
First reading of the bill.
Public utilities, reliability, and transparency requirements.
House Bill 258 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 259.
House Bill 259, sponsored by Representative Zwanitzer.
First reading of the bill.
Public utilities, regulatory amendments.
House Bill 259 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 162.
House Bill 162, sponsored by Representative Romero Martinez.
First reading of the bill.
Medical Treatment Opportunity Act.
House Bill 162 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 217.
House Bill 217, sponsored by Representative Wilson.
First reading of the bill.
Community Health Center and Rural Health Clinic grants.
Excuse me, House Bill 217 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 249.
House Bill 249, sponsored by Representative Clifford.
First reading of the bill.
Railroad safety.
House Bill 249 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 253.
House Bill 253, sponsored by Representative Gray.
First reading of the bill.
University of Wyoming, ban on funding for abortions.
House Bill 253 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 36.
House Bill 36, sponsored by Representative Larson Dan.
First reading of the bill.
Management Council membership.
House Bill 36 is referred to Committee number 12, Rules. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 92.
House Bill 92, sponsored by Management Council.
First reading of the bill.
Revisers Bill.
House Bill 92 is referred to Committee number 12, Rules. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 123.
House Bill 123, sponsored by Representative Larson Dan.
First reading of the bill.
Legislator Conference Travel.
House Bill 123 is referred to Committee number 12, Rules. Thank you, Reading Clerk. So members, you heard Rules Committee for the first time this session. And it's practice that the revisers bill go to Rules. And then there's two bills that were brought by a colleague. They will go to Rules to be considered there. Next week, we'll have a Rules Committee announcement at all. Rules Committee does not meet that often. So we'll have an announcement and make sure that folks are interested in any three of those bills, two which of course are policy bills. We'll have that announcement out. What else, Chief Clerk? Yep, well, we got one standing committee report, so let's go ahead and knock it out. That bill will be then available for general file. Thank you, Chief Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 122, Hunting and Fishing Access, Reliable Funding. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Hunt, Knapp, Newsom, Sweeney, Winter. Noes, Representatives Flintner, Haroldson, Jennings. Representative Newsom, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So members, we're at that order of business of bills on second reading. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 10. First bill for our consideration is House Bill 10. Maybe I'm on a different list. We just pause a moment. We've got lots of piles of bills up here. Make sure we're getting the right set of bills. That's all right. When you're ready, Reading Clerk, House Bill 10.
House Bill 10, sponsored by Minerals, COVID-19 Large Business Relief Program, an act relating to the emergency expense of government related to business relief.
House Bill 10, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 17.
House Bill 17, sponsored by Transportation, Range Management at Military Training Areas, an act relating to the Military Department.
We have an amendment. Representative Summers. Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'd like to move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 17 and ask for your favorable consideration. So, body, we had a long discussion on this bill and there was a big amendment. So this is the bill that would allow the military department to utilize some of the money that they got off grazing revenues and had an appropriation to be able to use for a range professionalist or other things related to range. So I believe what the bill after it was amended did was said you can bring in all of your money, you can spend all of the money, but at the end of the biennium, anything left over will trip. So that and it's my understanding they bring in over $300,000 a biennium in basically AUM fees, in cattle fees. And so my idea was, the old appropriator came out in me, and I didn't want to have an unlimited spend up to 300 and some $1,000 plus the appropriation that was on it. And so what this bill would do would be to limit their spend to 200,000, realizing that some of their money is going to trip over into the general fund, but they have the full ability to come before the Appropriations Committee and the legislature and appropriate whatever money they need if they make a good case. And so I'm saying 200,000 you can spend, and then I strip out the appropriation. I believe they can start this program once they generate enough into that fund to do their work. So that's what this amendment does: strips the appropriation and caps their spend at 200,000.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor. Any other members? Chairman Burkhart, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I gently push back on this, and mostly with a question. I understand what the good majority floor leader is doing, and demonstrates what I've done, which is we've spent a lot of time on appropriations, both of us together, actually. I would question stripping all of the appropriation out. They may need some initial money to get started. I don't know what that amount would be, but something to at least get going for this coming grazing season. And that's all I would wonder, if we shouldn't put back in some appropriation to at least get them started this coming season. So that's all. That would be a question, I guess, to the sponsor of the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member for their first time? First time. Representative Brown, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to follow up with the chairman here on this one. I'm going to push back and maybe look at bringing a third reading amendment to certainly reduce the appropriation, but cutting out the appropriation completely seems a little ill-advised, considering this is going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort to get this up and running. But I do certainly agree with the majority floor leader bringing this forward and reducing this appropriation. So maybe he and I can work together and bring something in third reading, but I'd urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member for their first time? Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I guess now I'm confused. I thought the testimony yesterday was this program is up and running, and it was the federal funds were cut and we were taking over the program with existing contracts, negotiations. People have been doing kind of the same thing on the same pastures with the same cows. But if that's not correct, I guess I need to know if that totally went away and now we're reconstituting something completely, or if we're opening all the leases back up to new people. I was under one impression, but I just want to, before I vote on this, if we're just substituting state government for federal funds that went away, or if we're initiating something new that has not been done before.
Thank you, Chairman. Any other member for their first time? Any other member for their first time? Second reading amendment number 1. Any member for the first time? Second time before the sponsor. Second time before the sponsor. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to clarify the question from the good chairman of corporations, this program was previously funded by the federal government. They removed that funding. And so the state, if we want to continue it, would pick this up. It's not a new program. They've been managing the range for years. This just generates how they do it. Additionally, back to the discussion from yesterday, there was a request for, I believe, if I remember correctly, and I have it here, 3 AWAC positions, which were removed by my amendment. So they're going to, in effect, contract out with management on this. And I think they need a little bit of an appropriation to start this grazing season. We can take care of that on a third reading amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Any other member for their second time before the sponsor? To the sponsor, Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And so this was, I guess, maybe the cowboy in me going, whoa, let's think about this a little bit. and pull your horse up. And so, yeah, I'm willing to entertain that, but what I've got now is strip out the appropriation and let's have a discussion. And if we need to bring it back in, let's have a more thoughtful reason why we're going to spend that money. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will now thoughtfully vote on the second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 17. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment fails. I had to look at my screen because I had 2 votes here and I was within a vote out there. So I had 2 noes here. Division being called. All those in favor, please rise. And those on the Zoom, you just use your hands when the appropriate time comes. Thank you. All those opposed? Less than 33. I told you it was close. 2 votes on the screen. The amendment has been adopted. House Bill 17, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Hearing no, read a 3rd time, hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 46.
Crime of bestiality, an act relating to crimes and offenses.
House Bill 46, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 65.
Political subdivisions, deposits, an act relating to public funds.
House Bill 65, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 76.
Uniform statewide payment processing, an act relating to the administration of government.
House Bill 76, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 85.
Unlawful dissemination of intimate image, an act relating to crimes and offenses.
House Bill 85, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 87.
Provider recruitment grant program repeal, an act relating to the provider recruitment grant program.
House Bill 87, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 103.
Journalists, privileged communications, an act relating to civil and criminal procedure.
House Bill 103, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 118.
Food Freedom Act amendments, an act relating to marketing homemade foods.
House Bill 118, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 135.
Hank Cole Leadership Highway Designation, an act relating to highways.
House Bill 135, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 148.
Fees paid to Secretary of State amendments, an act relating to fees paid through the Office of the Secretary of State.
We do have an amendment. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 148 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, this is just eliminating one of the increases. So if you'll see in the bill on page 12, the application and filing fee. An initiative shall be proposed by filing an application with the Secretary of State. A fee of $500 is the language that we have now. So the bill proposes to increase it to $1,000 shall accompany the application. So members, this is for a ballot initiative. And my understanding is there was only one done last year. So this really doesn't affect the budget a whole lot as far as increases, but it does affect those people that are trying to really perform some sort of, act of democracy, which is a ballot initiative. So I would ask for your favorable consideration, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any member for their first time? Any member for their first time? Chairman Nicholas, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, on and against the amendment. So we spent probably 3 working days, working with the, our good number 2 leader for the state of Wyoming, working through these various increases. And there's not a lot of initiatives that are out there, but they are costly for their office to run and to move them forward. And so what we want, what's important about this process is if anyone who wants to bring an initiative can bring one and file with the Secretary of State's office to do it. But we want folks who are serious about what they're doing and who are committed to a project, and that it's a realistic project and not just file it because they want to file it. And so this is the number that their office came up with as a reasonable amount, and the cost that it takes to operate their office and what the processes they do when initiative is filed. So on and against.
Thank you. Any other member for their first time? Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm in favor of the amendment. I had to think about it for a little bit, but let me give you some background and just some other stuff on how the mechanics of our state work. We just changed this fee in 2015. So it's been in place 5 years, 6 years, to be able to file a initiative or referendum. And I don't remember the exact numbers because I haven't looked in a couple of years, but I do remember we used to be in the 5 most difficult states in the country to ever get a initiative or referendum on our ballot. I believe it's still like 1/3 and 2/3 of the counties of registered voters who voted in the last election, whose address has to match their voter registration from, that 2-year period. And so it is incredibly difficult. And which is why we haven't seen any successfully, I think, since the 1992 gambling one is the last I remember. There have been groups in our state the last several years that have tried ballot initiative referendums from everything from marijuana to the getting corporate money out of speech. Back in 2006, when I was here, we did the domestic sales tax on food. That was a referendum that kept circulating the state that never had enough signatures, but it was close enough that this body acted on it. So, on top of the $3 million, I think it's almost $4 million biennium and fee increases in this bill, we're talking $500 for what would be a citizen-led effort that they're doing a whole lot of work without a whole lot of pay to go around, in most cases without pay. There are some provisions if you're paying people how it works, but by and large, these are people who are committed to changing government, usually when the legislature isn't listening enough or they haven't been able to get this body to push things. So I don't think 500 makes or breaks the bank. And I do think it is important that, we don't inhibit people from trying to exercise their rights in front of our government. So in this one small instance, I hate to go against my good desk mate, but I don't think $500 is that big a deal to encourage people to try a citizen-led effort in the state of Wyoming.
Thank you. Any other member of the first time? Representative Romero Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On and for the amendment and on the amendment. And I don't want to regurgitate or just echo too much, but it's already arduous. It's already difficult enough to get that number of 2/3 in every single county. And you do want people to be able to exercise and participate in their system, our system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Chairman Flitner, first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And if I could just get some clarification from the bringer of the amendment. The good chairman of Committee 7 referenced the filing fee as it stands today. Your amendment, I think, would delete the filing fee completely. So if you could just clarify.
Any other member for their first time on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 148? Any member for their first time? I've got 2 hands in the air. Natrona County to the rescue. Representative Washut is in the lead. There he is. Representative Washut for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The good chairman of corporations is correct. We do have an onerous process to get an initiative on the ballot. But if an organization really has the wherewithal to meet the rest of those requirements, they're going to have the wherewithal to come up with $1,000. And if we're raising all the other fees, it just seems reasonable to me that we increase this fee as well. and I stand in opposition to the amendment.
Thank you. Representative Gray for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So a little Natrona County, slight disagreement here. I would urge an aye vote on the amendment. I think these are not abused at all. And it's really the way the current statute is drafted, it encourages a fully grassroots movement in order to get an initiative on the ballot, and quite a grassroots organization. And I think to put this on top of it, with all the hurdles that are currently there, that's why we've had so few. It's just, I think we should just remove it. And to respond to that question earlier from the representative from House District 26. So it just removes it's amended language. So removing it keeps it at the status quo. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Fortner for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we already pay enough of a fee at the current price. I'm for this amendment. And I think that the public is well served with what they're making already. I don't see any reason to up it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other member for their first time? First time on this amendment, second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 148. First time, second time before the sponsor. Second time before the sponsor. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just quickly, so I have the data correct before the body. It's 15% of those voting registered electors, and you have to do that in 2/3 of your counties. So just for example, my county, we had, 33,000 votes, and so you would need 5,000 to hit that 15% threshold of legally valid voters from 2 years ago whose address hasn't changed, and they have to match signatures. So the bar is pretty high, and I don't think $500 is actually going to persuade or dissuade anyone, but I do think we can all appreciate a valiant effort by members of our citizenry to be involved and try to get signatures and petitions, and this might be one fee we don't need to do.
So now we have Laramie County at the mic. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm like a jury trial. I want to rest my case. So 5,000, the Secretary of State has to go and authenticate 5,000 signatures in order to have the initiative to figure out whether they properly applied. When people submit those to the Secretary of State's office, they should have to pay for the cost of the service that we're providing to them. And so all we're saying is, sure, you can do an initiative, but you got to pay for the cost of state government to move it forward and to authenticate the initiative. That's all we're doing is say, pay for what you get. I mean, part of this whole thing about for fee increases, and because a cost of government is expensive, we should pay for what we do. It's the Wyoming way. We don't expect government to do things for nothing. So let's pay for the services we're asking for. That's all we're asking. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other member? Any other member for the second time, Laramie County? Go ahead, Representative Romero Martinez. 3 in a row.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try to be quick here. I failed to say if equity is the issue here, and every fee needs to increase, what we're doing here is besides having to get that 15% in 2/3 of every county in Laramie County and House District 44, which is a pretty good chunk, my district alone probably has more population than a lot of people's area of living. Not only do you have to pay that $500, and specifically on some initiatives we raised in the past and tried to do it, and it took 20 years, 20 years, and we still haven't had this body or previous bodies listen to the people. It makes it more expensive for the people who are trying to get the initiative, because not only do you have to pay the $500, you also have to pay, if to get a successful initiative, $50,000. And when you look at the already existing disparities in other counties relating to healthcare, specifically is what I'm thinking, and to the point on and for it, if we're going to have a truly grassroots initiative, it's not just the $500, it's the people that have to work for free and that have to then go and spend $50,000 to $100,000 to get that through the state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their first time? First time. Natrona County doesn't want to come back to the fray? No one else for their first time? To the sponsor, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Great exercise in democracy, hopefully good practice for next week. I do love precise and concise conversation, and I don't really like to repeat things, but just, it really is, there's major barriers. Anybody that's been involved in one of these initiatives knows that there's a lot of volunteer time that goes in. And anybody that knows that if you're trying to set up a nonprofit, it takes a lot to do that also. I mean, if you're trying to do this the right way, it takes a lot of money. And I think this just sends a message that our state is going to be friendly to ballot initiatives, even though there's huge hurdles that are involved. But I guess we just, there was one last year, there may be one or two this next year. We spent a lot of time arguing about $500. So anyway, I hope the state doesn't lose out if the amendment passes. On and for the amendment. Thank you.
House Bill, we're voting on House Bill 148, second reading, amendment number 1. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment has been defeated. House Bill 148, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our joint resolution for our consideration is House Joint Resolution 3.
State lands, mineral royalties, constitutional amendment. A joint resolution proposing to amend the Wyoming Constitution to provide that 2/3 of the state mineral royalties earned from the lease of the state school lands may be appropriated by the legislature for the support of the public school for 6 years and providing a ballot statement.
Thank you very much. We do have amendments. And members, I want to be sure you recognize there is a corrected copy of the second reading amendment number 1. So refresh your amendments. There's a corrected copy. And then there's also a second reading amendment number 2 amendment has just been delivered. So please refresh. If you don't have corrected copy on the top of your second reading amendment number 1, give that a shot, and then we'll go with the amendment. Chairman Zwanitzer. And I see even from here, I can tell there's a puzzled look on the chairman's face. So if you'd like to proceed, or if you have a point of clarification or anything, all right. Chairman Zwanitzer, please proceed with your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Joint 3. I just, quickly had to track on my computer. I didn't know there was an amendment coming after. So real quick, ladies and gentlemen, this was the same discussion as yesterday. My ultimate contention is I do not want to put dates in the Wyoming State Constitution. And so the amendment before you, just the corrected copy, so you all know, is nothing more than adding my good co-sponsor's name, who also asked for the same amendment. I asked first, and then I accidentally didn't include her on mine. So there's nothing else in the corrected copy going on besides a name change of the good minority leader. Hopefully she's going to get up and help me with this one. But so no, I was thinking this morning, right? I can't just come to you and say, hey, I don't want dates in the Constitution. That's not a valid argument. And so really I was thinking the past 100 years, the world has changed, right? When the original Constitution had the 2/3, 1/3, about 100 years ago, we changed it, flipped it around to save more money for the future. And it really was, if you look at the materials at the time, to save money for future generations, to have the interest income forever tied to, the benefit of Wyoming and future generations. And I think that was very powerful in the 1920s with everything going on. But we're now in the 2020s, and I'll just advocate, the world has changed, right? We are a mobile society. There is nothing keeping generation upon generation of new young people in our state anymore. Really, it's a competitive landscape. Anyone can move anywhere. And so this thought process, if you look in the history books about we're saving, for the next generations of Wyomingites, who are those next generations? Well, hopefully, and actually, if you look at the numbers, we're down to 24, 23% of Wyomingites were actually born here. All these new studies that are coming out on how mobile our society is. So it's a new competitive atmosphere to try to attract people and get people to bring kids here who are hopefully going to stay here. And so with that being said, not that I don't think we should be keeping our mineral wealth for the benefit of our state, but we really are in a different landscape where we're trying to attract people. And so I do believe I would completely support this resolution without the 6-year time limit. it is quite honestly time we change it back, and we put more money in the pot now to educate our kids and put more work in trying to keep them here. We've been saying that for 100 years, but it hasn't been working very well, right? You all remember we were the only state that lost population last year, almost 1%, and our neighboring Northwest state gained like 2.4. We're obviously doing something wrong. I don't think it's education funding. We've been doing that right, but that's one of the few things I think we've been getting right. And now we're gonna look at reducing that. So I would encourage your change on this amendment. Take out the dates of the Constitution, realize that we need to put some more money into the system, try to stay competitive, try to recruit people, because really all the evidence is saying quality of life is a new big thing. So having outdoor spaces, hey, we got it. Cheap taxes, we got it. Great education system, we got it. Let's keep it and keep working on the things that will attract families here and then hopefully keep those generations. That's probably the way we grow our state in the future.
Thank you very much. Anyone else for this, on this amendment for the first time? Vice Chairman Hallinan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know that this idea has had a lot of controversy in the past, whether we want to limit this to 6 years or not. And I would bow to whatever the group here believes is the appropriate amount. I put that 6-year part in there because I thought that was the most critical time that this income was required by our school districts. But if you all disagree with that and prefer not to have that 6-year limitation in, then so be it. I would encourage you to vote your conscience on that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment, and I think for a different reason, we're talking about mineral royalties off state lands. We also get severance taxes off those. Not one penny of that severance tax goes to support schools, but it's built a permanent mineral trust fund. But talking about mineral royalties, I mean, because the rents all go to the current recipients. Any sales of lands, which by the way, federal government, we have some unbelievably valuable land in Teton County, right in the middle of the national park. But anyway, that's another subject, Mr. Speaker, but those sales would go to the permanent fund, but we're talking mineral royalties. And I think there was a time we all thought this was a real finite resource. And then you think about Wyoming, you think, you know, I talked about Salt Creek yesterday. Nobody even knew there was oil in the Powder River Basin like there is. Nobody ever thought about fracking, horizontal drilling. And you know, we got the largest uranium reserves in the country. There used to be a little town called Shirley Basin. Most of you haven't been there. It's just now some little paved street going around the circle. Last person left in the 90s. So I think all this continues to change. I think rare earths in the northeast part of the state, they're going to be big in the future. And then there'll be something else after we're gone. And I just think, you know, it's not necessarily a finite resource. And so the people here working, extracting those royalties today, let's educate their children with them. And I'm confident that as we sell lands and we continue to grow this and manage our wealth, because we are very wealthy, the envy of most of the nation. We don't borrow a penny. We got cash in the bank and we got billions in sovereign wealth funds. And we need to act like it and talk it up. And because the sun did come up this morning. I had that a request by the good representative right here on the House chamber. And it's going to keep coming up on our beautiful Wyoming. So I'm going to support this because I just don't like this 6-year business. And I appreciate the good member bringing this bill because it's all good discussion. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Madam and the Floor Leader Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm in favor of the amendment. Francis is the amendment that I said I would bring yesterday. But I am willing, unlike the good chairman of corporations, to say I just can't get up here and say I don't want years in the Constitution. For our preamble is one sentence. It says, "We, the people of the state of Wyoming, grateful to God for our civil, political, and religious liberties, and desiring to secure them to ourselves and perpetuate them to our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. Our preamble talks about posterity. So I look at this as a document that shows our values. It shouldn't have in it a time delimited period. So that to me is important. But following up on the good chairman of revenue, I truly believe it is our obligation to fund for today into the future. If we end up with more money because of this in any particular session, we put it into savings. We can put it back into the corpus. We have done it in the past and we can do it in the future. But right now we need to understand what our obligations are, and we need to have the revenue streams to do it. This is one way. On and in favor.
Thank you. Any other member? Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thought that the good chairman of corporations brought up a really important statistic. Well, he didn't use it as a statistic, but it's an important point. He says that we're younger now. Technology has changed, and what we see now more than ever before is that people aren't saving. And it's become a real problem, and it's a generational problem. We aren't saving for our future when we get to the end of our days and we're looking for somebody else to take care of us. And it's become a real problem. We've seen the department that oversees the health issues of our state come to us and talk about long-term care and the number of people that have not prepared for the retirement. And so I think his point really has a firm foundation in that saving is important and responsible. And we have to be careful about when we use it. And we certainly, in my opinion, need to be very careful about giving it up altogether, which is what this amendment would do. I think that that's a big mistake. I think saving is planning for the future. And I think that the foresight we hear, the good former speaker gets up and tells us repeatedly about the foresight of the people that set up these programs. And I completely agree with him. And I think that setting this money aside for education for the future was the right thing to do. I think to take it out of savings and take away that capacity to earn for the future is the wrong thing to do. And I'd urge you to vote against the amendment.
Thank you. Representative Gray for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would also urge a no vote, and the chairman of corporations, I am a little bit perplexed. I mean, I appreciate his work on the amendment and his work on various issues regarding our state, but I know he spoke about his concerns about the bill yesterday. And so why you would take out the time limitation now on an amendment is confusing to me. And the crisis we're in could very well be made up if there's some more reliability issues on the grid and we go back to needing and we were able to reverse this narrative and suddenly coal-fired power plants are kicking again. I mean, you could reverse this crisis in a matter of 5-6 years, and all that would need to happen is a demonstration that the reliability is not there, which I don't think it is going to be there, which is why what happened a month ago, you saw such a pushback on immediately, because they needed to make sure that idea, that narrative, the truth was not going to be out there. But the idea of doing this permanently, where we're going to have this diversion permanently, if coal comes back, oil and gas on the rebound, why would we permanently do this diversion? The idea of not having dates in the Constitution, I mean, regarding diversions, I just don't buy that argument. I think we need to be precise and do strong legislating. I mean, I think that's part of why we're in this position right now, is that there is a little ambiguity in what certain provisions mean in the Constitution, and that led to some interpretations from the Supreme Court that have put us in a position where we're not really able to be legislators anymore, and it's kind of on autopilot. So I'd urge precision here and reject the amendment. And if we are going to do this, which I have hesitation on without some additions, let's at least make it pretty precise and time limited, because it is a big change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Jennings for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'll be very brief on this. So this was sold to us as a Band-Aid and a short period fix. And so if we adopt this amendment, it becomes very, very likely that it'll be permanent because it'll be much, much harder to turn around on and against the amendment.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their first time on House Joint Resolution 3, second reading amendment number 1 corrected? Any other member first time? Member for their second time before the sponsor, second time. Second time now to the sponsor, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so I do think it's important to just know history in general, right? With this amendment, it takes it back. It would take it back to exactly how the founders of our state put it in the Constitution, right? They changed that 30 years later, the 1920s, when oil was booming. You've all heard of Teapot Dome, the Coal Acts of 1909 and 1910. They were making more money, I believe, than the generation before ever thought was going to be possible. And they said, hey, we have a lot more money coming in. We don't need to spend it all. Let's put it in a permanent fund. The world has changed 100 years later. It truly has. And I can appreciate that we have long-term care problems and everyone's older. That's not who we're talking about. We're talking about the future kids that we want to educate. We want to stay here in Wyoming, and we need to build a new economy on. I think you all saw the statistics last year that by 2040, we gained 50,000 Wyoming residents all over the age of 60, right? Our demographics in 20 years, we gained 50,000 people, and they're all retirees. Our state is going that way in a drastic free fall, and we're not doing anything to try to solve it besides throw money at education. And we have other thoughts about education. What this amendment does, it changes back the Constitution to how it was in 1890. We don't have to spend this extra 25 or 30 million a year, right? I mean, it's the will of this body. It just allows, we can call it flexibility, another tool in the toolbox. We could save that 30 million and still put it in a constitutionally protected account, but it's one more flexibility mechanism because things might get better, right? We have a whole bunch of bills that might get coal. We might find new uses. That would be great, but things might get worse, right? There's already talk about another oil price war with, supply tightening. And if that happens again, we're not going to be able to withstand it in our current budget. So maybe we need 6 years of flexibility. Maybe we need a longer term change. The more I think about the next amendment, I'm kind of liking the multi-generational thought process, but I don't like dates in the Constitution. If we're going to make this step, make the step, right? And then we or future legislatures after us can be strong enough to say, well, we're not going to spend the money, but at least we have access to it, right? That's the whole reason we have a rainy day fund that we started in 2004, roughly. We didn't say we're going to have to spend it, but it's flexibility should things go from bad to worse to wherever we're at now in a free fall. We can keep the flexibility there. So I would appreciate you taking the dates out of the Constitution, putting it back to the way originally our founders intended, and we call for the question.
Thank you, members. We are voting on second reading amendment number 2 to House Joint Resolution 3. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The amendment has failed. Thank you very much. We have a second reading amendment. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd move second reading amendment number 2 to House Joint Resolution 3. And you can see members just trying to find the sweet spot, the Goldilocks, where it's just right. So this is a 50-50 split and takes off the 6-year. So I think we know the issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any member for their first time? Second reading amendment number 2. Chairman Nicholas, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against for the same reasons we've talked about before.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Hallinan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd be against this amendment. I think that if we're going to go through the process of having a constitutional amendment, we should have enough money involved in it to go through that process. And going for just 1/2 would reduce the amount of money from 22 million to about 15 million. And that's just not enough money. So I think we need to have this bill stay as is at 66 2/3. So with that, I would be against this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Stiver, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the bringer of the amendment explain the delete? I think it's line 5. I don't have the amendment, but it says delete the 6 years. Could you get that explained? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other member for their first time, member for their first time, second time to the sponsor. Chairman Harshman.
Since you want to vote on this issue, yeah, it's permanent, 50-50 forever till we change the Constitution again. Yeah, I thought if I didn't say that the first time, my apologies, but yeah, 50% for today's children. The sons and daughters of folks out there working on the rigs today and working in our coal mines, and 50% of the fruit of their labor for the future, maybe their grandkids or some other future residents. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Members, we're voting on second reading of number 2 on House Joint Resolution 3. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The chair is not in doubt. The amendment has failed. House Joint Resolution 3, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. So members, we are now at that order of business on bills on third reading and final passage. We do not have a consent list. We have 3 bills on our list. And if the good Speaker Pro Tem would give me a break here in a few minutes, that'd be great. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 54.
House Bill 54, sponsored by Agriculture. Wyoming Meatpacking Initiative, an act relating to agriculture and economic development. May it be enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Thank you. We do have an amendment. Chairman Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 54 and would ask for your favorable consideration. This is a technical cleanup. Page 2, we insert on the substitute bill, line 5, we insert the in front of Wyoming Governor's Office. And then the other change would have been on the first page, and it removes requiring and adds authorizing. And I'd stand for questions.
Any discussion on the third reading amendment number 1, House Bill 54? Seeing none, all those in favor of the adoption of third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 54, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. House Bill 54, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner.
Aye.
Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood,
Aye.
Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western excused, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Blackburn? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 47 aye, 12 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 54 having been read 3 separate times, House Bill 54 having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House. House Bill 54 has passed the House. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 95.
House Bill 95, sponsored by Representative Zwanitzer. Game roadkill, an act relating to game and fish, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
House Bill 95 having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Clifford, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson. Aye. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner.
No.
Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
No.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western excused. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Clausen. Aye to no. Obermuller. No to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 35 aye, 24 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 95 having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House. House Bill 95 has passed the House. And so members, it is Friday and a little humor is fine, but we should just stick to our ayes and noes, please. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 111.
House Bill 111, sponsored by Representative Washit. Access to anatomical gifts and organ transplants, an act relating to healthcare, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We do have an amendment. Representative Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 111 and ask for your favorable consideration. Essentially, this amendment eliminates the language within the bill saying that the new law will not create a separate cause of action for damages. And I bring this amendment because I don't think the bill will achieve its true purpose without eliminating that language. The bill is meant to prevent discrimination when deciding on the recipient for an organ transplant. As written, the bill only allows for injunctive and equitable relief. In other words, you could make a provider assign an anatomical gift or transplant to a disabled member of your family. That's the intent of the bill. However, you conceivably would not be able to sue them for damages if they did not do so under the language of this proposed bill. The problem really arises because equitable or injunctive relief will probably not be a suitable solution. Most likely the organ that we're talking about will have already been given to some other recipient. And I'm fairly certain the court is not going to make us give it back to us. And so under the language of the bill, the provider would not be liable for any type of damages, money damages. There is a provision regarding the ADA, and that may apply, but the following provision, which is the provision I'm requesting we strike, counters that and essentially says it does not create an action. I think we'll end up in court deciding whether or not we can actually sue if we don't take that language out. So for the act to be effective, which I think I want it to be, and I think most of us do, we need that other avenue for enforcement within the bill. And I want to be clear, I'm not creating a cause of action through my amendment. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just taking out the language that forecloses the cause of action. And with that, I would kindly ask for your favorable consideration of the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our new country lawyer from Johnson County makes a persuasive argument. Vote aye.
Any further discussion, members? All those in favor, we're on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 111. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Amendment is adopted. Having been read House Bill 111 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Clifford. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer.
Aye.
Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner.
Aye.
Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood.
Aye.
Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stibar. Sweeney. Walters. Washut. Western excused. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 excused.
House Bill 111, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members of the House, House Bill 111 has passed the House. Good job, Representative Washut. We are at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I would move that the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Chairman Wilson.
Okay, folks, let's go. We were reminded last night that there's a lot of things waiting on the list. I will just give us one quote from previous speakers. The sound you hear of screaming in the hall is bills dying. Just a reminder. Okay, the committee of the whole, please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 73, and the reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 73, sponsored by Representative Greer, birth certificates, an act relating to vital records. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1 judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 73, birth certificates, gestational agreements, respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Crago, Oakley, Olson, Provenza, Ian, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representatives Larson Dan, Rodriguez Williams, Washit. Representative Washit, Vice Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Olson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 73 do pass. And I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to the House bill. And I'll turn over the explanation of the bill to the good country lawyer, the original country lawyer, Chairman of Minerals.
Representative Greer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Retired country lawyer. Oh, boy, simple little bill, right? So let me start with, and I'll walk through the bill. And as I walk through the bill, I'll also take in the standing committee amendment because I think it works pretty well. So, it was reached out to married couple in my district who couldn't have children. They had worked with the clinic. It was out of state, but had worked with an attorney in our district and set up a gestational agreement so that their sperm and egg could be carried so that they could have a child. It's going to be born here this next month, quite frankly. And, the mother reached out to me and said, my husband can be put on the birth certificate, but I can't in our jurisdiction. We've got to go through and do a full adoption. And she said, why can't I be on the birth certificate? And I said, seems logical. So I bring this bill. And this bill is to find a path forward in that exact situation. Boy, there was nothing nefarious in doing this. And one of the things that I'll say is that, I'm not trying to encourage economic development with uterus farms or anything else like that. What I was trying to do is just is put this biological mother on the same footing as the biological father in these situations, and give a process that was efficient, and then that made sense, quite frankly. And I realize that maybe this idea of a gestational agreement or arrangement may not sit well with some people's values, and I'll never ask you to vote against your values. Okay, but I also want you to know that this does go on. This is happening. This is something that people have been doing for quite some time now, and we really don't have any direction within the state or any structure with it. And it's just as if some religious groups do not believe in divorce, but yet, we have laws to guide us through that process. And so this law here is a law to help us guide us through. In my opinion, to put the woman on the same level as the man with respect to the process of getting a birth certificate for their biological child. And so with that precursor, let me go ahead and walk through the bill. And as I walk through it, I'm going to point out the standing committee amendment. And I think for the sake of speeding us along, let me try to deal with these amendments and get them knocked out. And then we can debate any higher issues associated with it. So on page 1 with the bill, we talked about the scope of the article. That article is a child of assisted reproduction. And we're just making it clear that gestational agreements are not included within that section of the statute. Then when we move down into the definitions, and this is a section on vital records, that's what we're talking about here is a birth certificate. So interesting section of the statute that we deal with. And so we talk about live birth. It means the complete expulsion or extraction from the mother, or it's a gestational carrier. We come down then, and this is the key language in this, and it's gestational agreement. So the definition of a gestational agreement. And it's an agreement between two intended parents and a gestational carrier. And it's got the terms here. I'll go through them. I want to point out on line 19, at the end, there is an as that is stricken out by the standing committee amendment. That's a technical correction that they made. So the agreement agrees to the pregnancy by the means of assisted reproduction. Gestational carrier and her spouse, if she is married, agree to relinquish all rights and duties. The agreement specifies that the intended parent shall become the parents of the child. All parties to the agreement are 21 years of age or older. I think the committee asked me why, age of majority is 18. I simply put in age 21. I just felt right. Okay. And then on subsection E, this agreement, and this will be key, and this is where one of the amendments are. This reads here, the agreement is filed with the state registrar or a local registrar in the county where the intended parents live. The standing committee, after we heard testimony from the department, struck this requirement of going to the local registrar in the county. And I think that was a good strike, quite frankly. Just means the agreement goes down to the Department of Vital Records. Okay. So that's in the standing committee amendment. Gestational carrier is defined as a woman 21 years of age who gives birth to a child under gestational agreement. Intended parents means two or more persons who enter into a gestational agreement with a gestational carrier, and then for which two persons assume paternity. I have a committee of the whole amendment to make that paternity or maternity. That was oversight on my part, so I'll clean that up. And then we talk about the birth registration, and then it's upon the birth under the agreement, the intended parents of the born child shall be deemed to be the mother and father of the child, including for purposes of birth registration. Submission of the completed application to by the intended parents to the Office of Vital Records. Okay, and then turning over on the last page, we said verification by the State Office of Vital Records Service that the gestational agreement complies with the requirements of the statute I just went through, period. Then we struck the rest of that on line 4. The 4 on line 4 all the way down to 8 is the other part of the standing committee amendment. So what this is instead of the mother, so the father can be put on the birth certificate. So instead of the mother having to go and go through basically an adoption, another legal process and fees and everything associated with it, they can take the agreement, file it with the state office and get their birth certificate with the biological mother and father on the birth certificate. So I think if I can, to help move us along, the things with the standing committee amendment were to fix the as that shouldn't be in there and to strike the filing provisions at the local registrar's office. And so if there's any questions on that, that'd be great. If not, I call for a question, and it was already moved by the good chairman of standing committee amendment number 1.
Any discussion on the standing committee amendment? Question being called. All in favor of the standing committee amendment number 1, please say aye. Any opposed? That amendment has passed. Go ahead, Chairman Greer.
Okay, Madam Chairman, then I brought, because, so I'm going to withdraw standing committee, or committee of the whole amendment number 1, which was to fix that pesky as, but we just did that. So I'll withdraw that.
Okay.
Okay. Then, Madam Chairman, I'll move committee of the whole amendment number 2, which, as I pointed out on page 4 was dealing with that provision where we just had paternity, and then it would also insert the language or maternity. And I call for the question. There's no question.
Any discussion on standing or on committee of the whole amendment number 2? Question being called. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
So,
Committee of the whole amendment number 2 is passed.
so Madam Chairman, folks, you know, I heard, and again, there are people with their beliefs on this, and I, again, would never ask anybody to vote against their own belief. But I also thought too, in terms of what I could do for some sideboards. And so if this bill moves forward, what I will do on a second reading or a third reading amendment, depending upon how busy I am over the weekend, is I look on page 3 and I may insert, no, I won't, I'm not may, I will bring this amendment and insert a clause, another provision. So it would be after D, and it would be something along the lines of that the intended parents have been residents of the state of Wyoming for at least 1 year prior to the date of the gestational agreement. And my thoughts with that is I did this to help a constituent. I did this to help people of the state of Wyoming. I don't want to see this in any way, shape, or form somehow be abused or some malicious side, industry gets set up in this great state. So I will bring that amendment. And again, either on second or third reading, depending upon my schedule. So for that, I'll stand for any questions on the bill.
Okay. Any questions on the bill? Representative Washut.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The good chairman of Minerals has alluded to the moral questions that go along with this whole process of gestational carrying of a child and so forth. And I just want everyone to know that there is an issue here, that this process involves most often the generation of lots of embryos, not all of which are used. And then the question is, what happens to the remaining embryos? And the other part of this equation is the gestational parent. There's no provisions within this bill for that individual. And so we have a woman who carries a child for 9 months and then delivers the child and then is out of the equation. And as a father of 6 children, I know that my wife had a bonding experience before those children were born. And so I think that we just have to keep that in our mind, what we're talking about here. It's easy to think about, this is a bill about birth certificates, but there's another dimension that I think we ought to keep in mind. And more specific to this bill, we did hear testimony from the Department of Health about a couple who were here in Wyoming from a foreign country, had one of these gestational agreement births, and got all the paperwork done and returned to their home country in a couple of weeks under existing law. So that leaves a question in my mind, how necessary is it that we even pass this bill? So I'll be a no vote today.
Representative Oakley. Are you up? Or Representative Rodriguez-Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm a no vote on this bill as well. I believe that this bill is a prime example that sometimes we have good intentions, but it opens the door to troublesome means. There's a multi-million-dollar industry out there that exposes vulnerable women and children. And I believe that this bill creates and allows the commodification of women and an effort to create a profit from life. Thank you.
Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. On and for the bill. There's something, it's just really, I mean, really important to understand here, and what it is not in front of this body, anybody's opinion on surrogacy. the legality or the morality even of it. It already exists. It's already legal. That is not what we are even discussing. Today in this bill. A previous speaker mentioned an out-of-country surrogacy that actually they were friends. Again, they had come to this agreement. One of the things you'll notice, of course, that's defined in here is a gestational agreement. It's an agreement between parties that willingly engaged in it. But again, that is not what's in front of us. I would suggest that it's unfair based on that to intentionally create barriers to access to necessary and required vital records because of opinions on surrogacy, which again is not in front of the body today. The point is this: the parents of like the child, such as the bringer of the bill, they are going to get there. They are going to be able to, they are going to be the legal parents of the child. They are going to get those vital records. It's just how many legal hoops and how much money they have to spend to get there. And so I would submit to you as a policy, deciding that you're against or that you wouldn't be a part of one of these gestational agreements, you're certainly welcome to that. But I don't think the proper way would be to make it more difficult and to block access to or create barriers. Again, it's not blocking access because they will get there. It's just going to make them, in the case that the bringer of the bill, get to adopt their own child so they can spend thousands of dollars. They're going to get there. So what we have here, we have an interest for our Wyoming citizens to have access to records for their children in a fair and efficient manner. And that's really what this bill is about, on and for the bill.
Representative Duckman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On and for the bill. Think about this child. This child grows up and the parents are going to tell this child their story because the parents have struggled to have this child. The parents are thrilled to have this child. They're blessed to have this child, because if you've ever talked to anyone that have had to go through this, they are so overwhelmingly blessed and thrilled to have this baby. Now, picture that you're the mom and you have to sit there and fight to say, I'm the mom, but this piece of paper doesn't say that I'm mom. Now, I already have the trauma and the drama that I can't carry a baby. I'm less than because I can't reproduce. So I have to go through IVF and everything else I possibly can, and I can't reproduce. I'm less than. So then I finally find someone who's willing, and bless their soul, they're willing to do this for me. We end up signing a contract. This person is a saint because they're willing to do and give life to me and my family because I can't do this on my own. Then I'm again less than. Because my name can't be the one thing I want to do. My name can't be on that certificate to say, I am the mom. So once again, I'm less than. That's all this bill is doing. This bill is giving me dignity that I can claim that I am the parent. Let us keep our own opinions out of it. These people have already made their decisions. They are adults agreed in a contract. We've already, as a society, have already made people less than. On and for the bill.
Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. They mentioned parents 6 times in this bill. I would be more apt to agree if it was married parents in the state of Wyoming, and agree with the good speaker from the last good speakers, all of them. It's going to happen. And it's something that I do not disagree with the good speaker from District 5. If a married couple and the woman is unable to conceive children, I don't see a problem with this bill because I know it's going to happen. And it is happening right now. But I think married couples should be in there because it takes 2 people at least to raise a child, if not a whole village. On and against.
Representative Jennings.
You know, this is probably something that's out there in our culture that we really ought to be looking at, but I'm uncomfortable with just jumping through this hoop immediately. This ought to be an interim topic that we can look at. And because there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts in this. And so I'm going to be a no on this. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion on the bill? Oh, Representative Romero Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am on and against. Not only does it create a commodification, it also supports a utilitarian method. My heart goes out to those who can't conceive. That's why adoption is always a possibility. To respond to the idea of those who are made to feel less than, try being one. For the people of faith who go by natural law, in which constitutional and statute should support, just because we open Pandora's box, all you're doing is making people in the faith community, even with an amendment, continue to be less than. And some of these members are members of my own party. So if you're going to talk about dignity, make sure you put the precursor of false dignity, because true dignity is having a child between one man and one woman. And if they can't do it, there's plenty of children that could be adopted that fall off the cliff of having dignity because we don't care and we make other people feel less than. This is just another example of the cancel culture, only this time in my party. On and against.
Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On and in favor of this bill. Friends, our statutes have changed over the past 100 years to recognize infertility. Right? The former speaker just spoke about adoption. Our original statutes didn't allow for adoption. Adoption, honestly, is a legal fiction, right? We have a new birth certificate where we put a father and a mother on a piece of paper who aren't the biological father and mother, but we acknowledge that adoption exists, and honestly, all of us celebrate it. But we changed our statutes to acknowledge adoption. 17 years ago, we changed our statutes to acknowledge surrogacy, right? It exists in 142403D. It's as simple as that. It's right there. The recognition today is that we are making it difficult for the parents of the child born of surrogacy to simply get their birth certificate. This bill is about making it easier for the parents of the child to start being the parents. It's as simple as that. Other than this, they're required to go through an expensive adoption procedure. It is costly, it is inefficient. We celebrate them being parents. Everyone knows they are the parents. Let's just make it easy for them to file the proper form with our Division of Vital Services. On and in favor.
Chairman Eklund.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So a couple questions didn't get answered, and I know they're not part of the bill. That the one on the fertilized ovum, I believe we have the technology to fertilize just one at a time, and so you don't have to deal with the morality of frozen ovum, some fertilized ovum somewhere. The other part of this, it hasn't been answered. It's not in the bill, but I guess I need an answer on before I can vote on it, because constituents have sent messages to me that it makes it sound like children are a commodity and a piece of property. They're not, they're a gift. And I think all of us would agree there. What happens if the surrogate mother decides she wants to keep the baby? And like I say, it's not in the bill, but it's something that I need to know to make a good decision on this.
Representative Ayer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I didn't plan to speak on this bill, and I can't be as eloquent as many who have spoken before me. But as I understand this bill, it's not going to change what's been happening. It's not going to change what happens in the future. This happens, and I happen to know of 2 instances where a couple who for years tried to conceive and be parents, biological parents, had a wonderful thing. The miracle of modern medicine allowed them to have a biological child. Along with a surrogate mother who did the most unselfish thing I can think of. And in allowing them to become biological parents. I don't think this bill is going to change that from happening, but it would just allow them to be on the birth certificate as the parents. On and for the bill. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion? Seeing no further discussion and the question being called, all of those who are in favor of Chairman Olson's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 73 do pass, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. House Bill 73 has passed the committee of the whole. Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Madam Chairwoman, I move that the committee of the whole beg leave to rise and sit again at 2 p.m.
Are there any committee announcements? Evidently not. Are we adjourned then? Or you want the chair back? Chairman Burkhart.
Madam Chairman, I don't have a committee announcement, but would a re-referral be appropriate? at
Go
this
right
time?
ahead.
I would like to re-refer.
Oh, wait,
House-
I beg your pardon. I have been instructed that I have only delegated authority, Chairman Burkhart.
Madam Chairman, that's why I asked.
Come back later. Any more, Chairman? Chairman Paxton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet at 5 minutes after 12 o'clock to consider 2 bills. House Bill 173, School Finance Funding. It's a substitute bill. And House Bill 63, Early Childhood Education. It'll be in E3.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Corporations, your committee number 7 is going to meet here in about 5 minutes in EO5, ambitiously to get through 5 bills, including House Bill 96, Treatment of Animals, House Bill 199, Vehicle Insurance Anti-Stacking, House Bill 79, Subdivisions, House Bill 163, congressional elections residency, and House Bill 119 auto insurance claims.
Wow. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Your committee number one judiciary will meet immediately upon adjournment in committee room number 1 on the east side to receive an update on justice reinvestment, a two-year-long project from CSG. So grab your lunch, come on down and join us. Thank you.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Your House Appropriations will hold any referrals. I'm not sure if there are any, but we'll have to hear those at 1:30 and room 113 on Monday, March 8th. We will hear House Bill 132, 164, 219, 244, and 263, and any other referrals. And we're currently scheduled for that to also be in 113.
Any other committee announcements? Then the committee of the whole is in recess.